know that he is very disappointed he's not able to be here tonight. He would love to be here tonight. So he loves doing the webinars, but we're going to fill in for him tonight, and we'll just go ahead and get going with it. Tonight we're focusing, we've done a lot of showing you how to use the automated tools in the software. And what we're going to do now is, go into a little bit more of the manual tools of the software, because they're extremely important as well in the software. So we're gonna focus on that tonight. And as we get started here, you wanted to point out a couple things for you. First of all, when we're talking about manual tools, we're focusing on more of the tools like a run stitch, a satin stitch, as opposed to working with vector artwork or auto digitizing wizard. And the important things to know about the difference between manual and auto creation tools are that the manual creation tools are the ones that allow you to have the most control. They will give you the ability to do more. You will spend less time editing or changing things, and you get just a much better overall result and quality when you use manual creation tools. So that's why it's kind of important to focus on learning how to use the manual creation tools as opposed to just the automated ones. Automated, I know I've heard Walter say it a few times, a lot of times the auto digitizing has been a big improvement in FTCU, and people love it, but it also does require a little bit of editing. And so the more you know about the manual tools, the better off in the whole creation process you are. And so we're going to spend a little time on that. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about as well is, why we must learn how to use the tools in the software. Learning how to manually create stitches takes a little bit of time, and you have to get to know how to use and click around in the software to do the things like the running stitch tool and the satin stitch tool. And that's the first thing that you have to know how to do in the software. The second thing is you have to learn a little bit about the rules of embroidery, which we won't get into tonight, but we'll focus more on how to use the tools. And one of the other things I wanted to point out before we get started is that there are technically two different ways that you can manually create stitches, and I'm going to show you how to do it both ways. The first way is using the artwork tools. As you know, the Floriani software is a very powerful artwork creation software program. Those of you who have cutters and things like that, you will love the fact that you can use your Floriani software to help in creating for your cutters. And so we'll talk a little bit about using the artwork tools and then converting those outlines that you create or the objects you create into stitches. And then we'll also focus on just the digitizing tools. So I just wanted to show that and talk a little bit about that before we get started. So I'm going to bring up the software. And in the software, one of the things that I wanted to make sure that I mentioned tonight, just in case you weren't aware, I know we've talked a little bit about the My Floriani Today page in a few of the webinars, but a lot of times people forget what resources are available. So I just wanted to point out really quickly one of the buttons in the My Floriani Today page, and it's the one listed right here that says what's going on, click here for announcements. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. I'm going to bring it up. As you can see here, I have it listed here. So on the club, you have the current newsletter that we send out every Tuesday. And we do this to make sure that you're aware of what's going on, but also we a lot of times have a video that Kathy Quinn does that shows you how to do something new in the software. We just had this one go out today, but I wanted to show you that we can go back and we can look at an archive as well, like Weekly Educational Video Archive, the My Floriani Club Weekly Archive. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the archive, the weekly one, and you will see on here that you can go back and you can look at any of the announcements we've had, and you'll see like listed here on 4/14/2015 vector, raster, JPEG, bitmap. This is a great lesson that Kathy Quinn did to explain the differences between those words that we hear a lot, but we're not quite sure what they are. Like, what is a vector file? What's a raster file? And so you want to make sure that you go in, and if you haven't watched these or looked at the weekly events, that you come in here and take a look at those. I just wanted to point that out really quick today because I just want to make sure everyone knows about that resource that's available. So now that we have that done, I'm going to go ahead and close this. So the first thing that I want to do tonight is show a little bit about creating using like the Run Stitch tool. So I'm going to bring up an image in the software, and this is one that I created a while back, and it's just this little heart design. And what I did is I put on here some points, like 1, 2, 3, 4, because this is where you would click to create these tools. So when you're using like the Run Stitch tool, it's a very simple tool to use. It's located up here at the top. It says Run Stitch. We're going to go ahead and left mouse click on it, and you'll see that I have, just before we get started here, you see that there's a red dot for number 1, and you also see another red dot on number 20. Basically, what the red dot means is that's where I'm going to do a left click, but I'm not going to hold down anything like control. That means it's just going to be a regular point that I'm going to click in the software. So I'm going to go ahead and click right here, and then before I click on number 2, I'm going to hold down the control key. I'm going to hold down the control key as I click on all of these numbers. And I'm just going to go down the line to show you how we can easily create this heart using the Run Stitch tool. And when I get down here close to the end, you can see I get to 19. I'm still holding down control. I'm going to release my mouse click to click on number 20. But let me just show you, if I do hold down control, what happens. I'm going to keep it held down and hit control. See how this line kind of curves? It's trying to curve around this point, and that's why it did it. So I'm going to hit backspace a couple times. I'm going to hold down control as I click right here on number 19. Now this time I'm just going to release my control key and just left mouse click. You can see that I get that corner that I want. So when you get into a tight corner, you can hold down the control key, but the first point after a tight corner, make sure that you release the control key. And that's really the only trick to utilizing the Run Stitch tool. And that works the same with a couple of other tools as well. So just to finish this out, I'm going to hold down control now as I click the rest of these. And we're going to get around this design here. And when I get to the end, I'm going to right mouse click, and when I do that, it's going to generate the stitches. Now you can't really see the stitches because the image is there, so I'm going to go ahead and select my backdrop tool here. I'm going to right mouse click and uncheck this box for show backdrop. And I'm going to turn off my grid as well. I'll put it in 3D view. So you can see that we just created this heart shape. Now once you have a Run Stitch in your design, you now have the ability to change it, change the properties of it. So I wanted to make sure I showed you a few of those. There's not a lot of different things that you can do the properties, but if you look in the upper right-hand corner, under Type, you can see that it's a single run. And what that means is it's just going to do a single run all the way through the design. if I select it and I come up here and I do a double run and hit apply, you will see that it will go and do the design all the way through. Then it will come back over the top of itself to create a double run. You see that a lot in RedWork designs, where it will go over each area twice. And let's see, let's select it again, and let's go to a bean stitch. And on the bean stitch, we have the ability to control how many times it repeats the bean. And that's located right here in the properties box, where you can do it 3, 5, 7, 9, or 11 times. And the more repeats you have, the thicker the line will appear to be. You're starting to see a lot of designs out there right now that are utilizing 5, 7, and 9 ply beans, and it creates a really rich, thick run stitch that is very popular right now. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit 7, and then I'm going to hit apply. And just to show you really quickly what that looks like and how it generates, I'm going to zoom in here at the beginning of this run stitch. And I'm just going to come up here to my slow redraw, and we have this little next stitch tool. So I'm going to click it, and you'll see that it goes forward once. Click it again, it comes back, forward, back, forward, back, forward, and then it jumps to the next one. And it will repeat this one sometimes. So go forward, back, forward, back, forward, back, forward. Forward, back, forward, back, and it just builds upon itself. It does 7 times in each spot, creating a really nice, thick running stitch. So I want to make sure I pointed that out and explained a little bit about how the bean stitch works. And the other things you can do with the bean stitch is you can do commands to it, like a starting command of normal is generally what you do. An end command, you could have it do a trim or a stop. Also, you can do your lock stitches. Your lock stitches are the little tiny stitches that take place before an object sews out. And so you can control that by doing basic lock stitches. And so that's really kind of what you can do with a run stitch. Now there's another tool that's very similar to it. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to bring my image back up. And I am going to this time go to my steel stitch, because a steel stitch, even though it's a satin stitch, it's a defined width satin, meaning it's going to be the same width all the way through whatever you create. And so when you're creating it, you create it exactly like you do a running stitch. I have it selected up here. It's located up at the top. It's steel stitch. And I'm just going to do it exactly the same way. I'm going to left click and I'm right click around it. I'll go pretty quick. I'm not going to try to get too accurate with it. So we'll just get through it really quickly. You're going to do the same exact thing when you get down to the bottom. You're going to release the control key when you hit on that first stitch after a hard corner, and then I'm going to hold down control again and work my way around, and I'll show you what this looks like here in a second. And the steel stitch is something that you use quite often. And the reason is because it creates a nice even satin stitch. And you can control it. So once you have it created, you can come up to your width, and I can change it from, let's say, a 3 millimeter to a 5 millimeter, make it thicker. And really, you can change underlay of it. So you can change it. Right now, it's using a parallel underlay. I could change it to a contour with a zigzag. And let me turn off 3D view and also turn off this image so you can see it a little bit better. If I zoom in, you'll be able to, you'll be able to see the underlay that's applied. And that's a steel stitch. So those two, running stitch and the steel stitch, you create them basically the same way. You can utilize the steel stitch in a number of things, anything that you want it to be a very defined width satin stitch. So I'm going to move on, and I want to show you one of the next stitches here. So I'm going to bring up another design. This one is going to be the Heart 2. And as I bring this one in, I also did the points as well. There's a lot of confusion at times about when to use which satin stitch and how to use each satin stitch. And these satin stitches are located up at the top, and we have a regular satin and we have a classic satin. And I will just tell you, a lot of people like the regular satin stitch. It's a little bit easier for them, especially if you're a beginner learning how to use the regular satin stitch. The classic one can be kind of difficult, but a lot of people have been doing designs for a long time. They like to use the classic satin. So it's really a personal preference. There isn't a better way to do it, but the important thing to know is just that the way that you create it is different. And so in this image right here, you will see that I have numbers 1, and it goes all the way through 15, 17, all the way around, and then it comes back this other direction. So when using the regular satin tool, that's how you create it. I'm going to left click, and I'm going to hold down Control as I click these buttons, but I'm going to define one side all the way before I define the next side. So we're going to go through this really quick, just showing you how to utilize this tool. And again, I have a red dot there, so I'm going to release my my Control key and just click, and then I'm going to hold down Control again so I can make that corner really nice. And we'll get around here. And the unique thing with this satin stitch is that as you get around to the end, you're going to click in here, and you're just going to jump to the next side and click, and you're going to start working your way back. I'm holding down Control now at this time for all these blue dots. Sorry, it takes a little bit of a while to get through this. I normally would do it in less clicks, but I wanted to make sure that you saw how to do this. So I'm going to release the Control key so I can click on this one because it's following that curve. And let's see, hold down Control as I keep going here. A lot of people will, say that they like doing the automated way or doing auto digitizing as opposed to having to create and do all these points. But I actually, if you like to do things like puzzles and things like that, you can get into this rhythm of digitizing, and it can be very relaxing. So that's why I like people to start playing with these manual tools to learn how to do it. I plotted that last point, so I'm going to go ahead and right mouse click. And you can see when I right mouse click in this program, when we're using the satin stitch, you can see my little cursor. There's a black dot next to it, and what that's telling me is it wants me to put in the angle lines. So when I'm using this tool, I have to come in and draw in angle lines, and so I'm going to do a few here. I'm just clicking and dragging across to the other side, and I'm actually going to use these dots as a reference. I'm not going to do it for every single one, but I'm going to just come in here and do a few of these to let it know how I want it to go around the corners. And that's basically all I'm doing by putting in these angle lines. But you can see I'm pretty much just following in between the points here. I'm going to come down to the bottom and do another one that's kind of straight. I'm going to right mouse click, and you see how my cursor changed again. It has a green dot. That is asking me where do I want the start point of this to be. So I'm going to come down here, I'm going to left click right here. Now you can see I have a red dot next to my cursor. That's telling me where do I want the end point to be, so I'm going to come up here and do the end point. The moment I click on the end point, it automatically generates the stitches. So it's a little bit different. You do have to, once you outline the shape all the way around, then you have to go in and tell it where you want the angles, how you want them to be, where you want the start point, and where you want the end point. So it's a little bit different in using the regular satin tool. So I'm going to go ahead and select it so that you can see a little bit of the options that you have for a satin stitch. We won't go into a lot of details, but you have you can change it. Right now it says satin. If any of you have ever wondered how to make a curved fill pattern, it's using the satin stitch tool, and all you do is change it to a fill pattern and hit apply, and you'll notice that now I have a fill stitch that actually angles around corners. And that's all you have to do to create a curved fill pattern, is just create a satin stitch and then change the pattern. Density you can change. You have the controls for underlay. You have some gradient options, so I could actually tell this that I want it to be linear increasing and apply. Let me go ahead and turn off the backdrop so you can see that it actually does a gradient pattern. Show you a couple other ones. You have a convex, so it'll be thicker down here and lighter around. You're seeing a lot of the underlay right now, so I'll turn that off. But you can do a lot of different things with the satin stitch. And that's how you utilize the regular classic or regular satin tool. So I'm going to go ahead now and show you the opposite using the classic satin tool. So to do that, I'm going to bring up a different image here, and you'll notice that the numbering is different. So this time, as opposed to going 1, 2, 3, 4 along the inside, it's going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's zigzagging from side to side. That's how you utilize the classic satin tool. And the other difference with it is that you're actually creating your angle lines as you create the satin. So you don't go back at the end and put in your angle lines, because it follows however you create your points. So I'm going to go ahead and get started here. You can see there are two red dots, so that means just single left clicking without holding control. And next I'm going to hold down control as I click on, and you'll notice I go from 5 to 6, 7 to 8, 9 to 10. I'm just going straight across here from side to side. And when I'm done with it, it will create the structure. Now, like I said, it seems pretty easy to do right here, but again, I have these little dots that kind of help guide me. So for those people who are starting out that haven't ever used this tool before, it can be hard for many people to figure out how and where to put the points. You can see they slightly angle all along it. And you can see I'm on 35 and 36, so I'm going to release the control key because they're red dots, just so I can get in and out of that corner nice and straight rather than rounded. And now I'm going to hold down control, and I'm going to keep clicking on the design. And I will make these images that I'm showing you with these dots, I will make them available for download with the video. So don't worry about that. If you want to practice using the tools, I'm actually going to provide those that will be on the club. So when you go to watch the video, there'll be a link to where you could download the practice lessons here. And I'm going to left click right here. And so now I'm just going to right mouse click, and you'll notice that it just generates the stitches. I didn't have to tell it start point, end point. I didn't have to give the angle lines, because it starts where I first clicked and it ends where my last click was. And like I said, the angle lines, so I can go ahead and show you what that looks like. Let me turn this off, the backdrop. I have this selected. If I hit my shape tool, which allows you to edit, you'll notice that I have all my angle lines here, and they're exactly where I clicked when I was creating the structure. So it's I prefer the classic satin tool, but like I said, it's hard for most people when they start out, but it's definitely worth playing with, because I think it's a little bit faster to use as you get going, and you have a lot more control. But that's our classic satin tool. So So far we went through the run stitch tool, we've gone through the steel stitch, which is the defined satin, and we've done the two normal satin stitches. So now what we're going to want to do is look at really quick the applique and applique stitch tools. Let's go ahead and create a new screen here. And I'm going to go ahead and grab this next one right here. And this is very similar in a way to the first one we did. However, this one is a closed heart. And whenever you're doing something like applique or applique stitch, you want it to be a closed shape. So you create it. I'm going to click on the applique tool up here, left mouse click on it, and you can see I have a red dot, and I'm just going to follow the sequence here. I'm going to hold down Control as I go on any of these blue dots. We're just going to create this applique really quick, and then I'll go into some of the properties of the applique. So when I get to number 15, release the Control key so I can have a nice straight line. And now I'm going to be holding down Control as I click the rest of them. When I get to the end, I click there, and then I'm just going to simply right mouse click off of the screen, and you will see that it created a satin border here. And if I look at my properties box over in this area, you'll see that it says applique, and you'll see that the type, the border type, is set at satin. So I can take that and I can change it to a blanket stitch and hit apply. Oh, I have to select it first. Sorry, I didn't have it selected. Go to blanket and hit apply. And you can see I wanted this to happen, and I'm glad that it didn't close. You'll see that right now, if you look at this, you'll be like, why are the blanket stitches going towards the outside of the heart as opposed to in the middle where it should be? And this is one of those things that I was hoping I didn't get too close to the edge here, but there's a very, I could go into an explanation of why it happens, but basically it's not a closed shape yet. But if I select it and I hit this close shape button down here, you'll see located in the bottom left. When I close that structure, it reverses them back. So closing that shape allows it to know that, hey, this is a defined area. This is the actual applique on the inside of here. So I'm going to hit undo, and I'm going to click on, I'm going to hide this backdrop here. And I want to just zoom in right here. So when I click on, when I select it and hit the shape tool, you'll notice that there's this little gap right here. That's what's causing this to happen, is it's just not a closed shape. So as I come back in and I hit the close shape, let me select it, hit the close shape here. Now when I zoom back in, you will see that it's actually closed. So just wanted to point that out when doing applique. If you ever see that, if you're doing a blanket stitch and it's going the opposite direction, all you have to do is hit close shape. So moving on, you do have the ability to also have a motif border your applique. But there's some other really, really neat features here that we really tried to take our applique to the next level. And we've had the ability in the past to add fabric, but I'm going to go ahead and show you. I'm going to click on the fabric here, the little icon, and you'll see the fabrics that we have available. So let's just say I wanted to pick any of these. Let's just take this dark vertical sweater and hit apply, and you can see that it will apply that in the background. But I don't know if you noticed, I know we talked about it a little bit, but in one of the weekly things that Kathy Quinn did, we might have touched on it in a webinar, but you see when you have the fabrics up, you have the ability to remove a fabric, crop a fabric, or rotate a fabric, and that's a really neat option. I can take any of these. Let's say, let's take something like this vertical stripes. I'm going to hit rotate. And you can see that when I hit rotate, I have the ability to rotate at 90 degrees, 180 degrees, and 270. So you know that they were going up and down, and I'm going to change it to 270 and hit OK. And you can see that it switched over here, and when I hit OK, it applies the fabric, going basically the opposite direction than what it was originally. So I can come back here and go back to save it at 90 degrees. You just have some different options here. And you also have the ability to crop it. So let's say you brought in a piece of fabric and the swatch was a little bit too big that you didn't want all of it there. You can grab these little handles and change and crop it out. I'm not going to save this one because it's one that's with the software, but you can do that and crop it and make it a little bit more of how you wanted it. So I just want to show that really quick. And hit cancel here. So when you're working with applique, the biggest thing with applique is you have a placement stitch that sews down first, and that's, you can see right here, this is a placement stitch. Right after the placement stitch, you have a tack down stitch. You can see that's representative of this red line. And as I go across here, you can see that it puts that one in. Let me take it off 3D view really quick. I want to make sure you understand that with this tack down stitch, you can see it's indented a little bit from the placement. That's just to make sure that you know, when you go to cut the fabric, you're going to go and cut around it. It's not going to make it too wide. And then you have your border stitch that goes third. So you have 3 different stitches for applique. And so when you have that in the software, when you create applique, you have the ability to control. You can actually turn it off. Let's say that you don't want a placement stitch there. You can uncheck it and hit apply. And when I do the slow redraw now, you can see that I just have a tack down stitch and a border. Let's say that you wanted just a placement stitch and a tack down stitch, but you didn't want a border stitch. Maybe you wanted to create your own border after the fact. You can apply that, and you will see that you just have a placement stitch and a tack down stitch. You know, you really have a lot of options for what you can do with it. I'm going to go to Applique Extra tab up at the top, and this is a whole nother tab. And the really neat thing about this is you can see on tack down, we did have the ability to do a zigzag stitch as a tack down, which a lot of people like. But let's say you're doing a raw edge applique where you're going to want to, there's a couple people call the blanket stitch kind of a raw edge. When I talk about a raw edge, I mean more of like you're going to have a placement stitch and a tack down, and you're going to cut around the edge, but you're not going to, you're going to let the fabric just fray. You're not going to put a border around it. It's kind of popular. It's like the distressed applique. This is how you create it. You just do a placement stitch and a tack down stitch, and you just eliminate the finish stitch, and that will help you to create that distressed applique where the edges are allowed to kind of fray when you're done. And so I wanted to point that out too. But applique is a lot of fun. I love applique. I know we're going to be doing a webinar pretty soon on applique, and can't wait for you to see all the different things that you can do with that. And so that's the applique tool, creating it manually. So I'm going to bring that image back up again, and this time I'm going to use the Apple-Stitch tool. The Apple-Stitch tool, for any of you who don't know, we sell a product called Apple-Stitch. It's a fabric that is meant to tear away after you create your border stitch. So it's a fabric that you don't have to cut with scissors. It just pulls away from the border stitch. And there's just one unique thing that we do with it, and I'll just show you really quick. Creating it is just like creating a running stitch or a steel stitch or an applique stitch. You just left mouse click your way around the area to define the object and when you get to the end, you just right mouse click. And here I'm going to release control key so that I can create that nice straight edge. I'm going to come around here. And I just want to show you what makes Apple-A-Stitch so unique. I'm going to right mouse click, and you can see that I've created those stitches. And I always like to close the shapes. It just is something that I like to do. I didn't get all the way to the edge here, so that's why you kind of see it. I can edit that if I want. But in the Apple-A-Stitch, you'll see that there's this little running stitch that kind of goes on the inside of the border. That is what we call a trapping stitch. And so you can see it here in the properties box that I have the same kind of controls that you saw with applique. However, you see this little trap stitch and the offset that it is. I can make it kind of come out further, be closer into the middle. But that trapping stitch is a very important stitch. Because if you think about fabric, and if it's meant to tear away from a border like this, because the satin stitch goes from side to side, it would tear on the inside of that border as well as on the outside of the border. So this running stitch, what it does is it traps the fabric. It traps it so that it can't be torn away from that satin stitch. So it keeps it so that the fabric will remain there. I'm going to select it and go to my fabrics, because you'll see all of these that are listed with an A and an F, that means that it's an applique fabric. So these are actually swatches taken from what's available for purchase for the Apple-A-Stitch fabric. So if I take this fuchsia glitter and hit OK, you can see that it applies that to the background. So you can kind of preview what it would look like. Like this is our leather. And so Apple-A-Stitch is very similar to applique. You do have the options to control things. The important things with Apple-A-Stitch are this trapping stitch and this border stitch. This border stitch is set at a very specific density, and the density is what allows the fabric to be cut away from the border stitch. So just wanted to point out the Apple-A-Stitch tool, and let's go ahead and move on really quick. So I've kind of saved the fill stitch here, for the end, because the fill stitch, a lot of times we create something that, like a fill stitch that we would have a hole in. Meaning, if you look up on the screen here, you'll see this this rectangle that has a circle, a diamond, and a star. And these are actually areas that I want to leave out. I don't want it to be filled with any stitches. And so I want to show you how to create a fill stitch and also create a fill stitch with a hole. So first, if I just wanted to create a regular fill stitch in this rectangular area, I would just left mouse click. I'm in the complex fill tool, all the way around, right mouse click, and I get to set what angle I want it to be. Right mouse click again, I say this is where I want it to start, this is where I want it to end. And that's how it generates the stitches. But in this case, so that's just a very simple complex fill. But what I wanted to show you is how to get a little bit more control out of it and to create a fill stitch with a hole. So with the complex fill tool selected, I'm going to left click on 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I didn't go all the way to the edge for a reason. I don't want to close this shape per se. I want to now let the software know that I'm ready to add a hole. And it's really simple to do. All I do is hit the letter H. H is in Henry on my keyboard. And now all I do is hold down Control as I click 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. I didn't close it. I'm going to hit the letter H again, and I'm going to come up here and define this star area. So I don't have to create the fill stitch and then create a hole. I can do it all at the same time. So I'm going to click on 25. I'm going to hit the letter H on my keyboard again. And now I'm going to do 26, 27, 28, and I'm going to come all the way back up to the top for 29. And now I'm going to right mouse click, and I'm just going to keep the angle going up and down, and then I'm going to do my start point and my end point right here, and you will see that it created this fill pattern with holes in it. So it's not a complicated thing to do. The trick is to define the outside, hit the letter H on your keyboard, and then define whatever the inner part that you want left out of the fill stitch. So it's a pretty simple thing to do. So I just want to show you that really quick. And remember, the video, they are available to view later. So if you want to watch it and get to know how to use these tools a little bit more, you have the ability to do that. So I'm going to come in now. So since I've showed you those, there's one tool that we didn't talk about, and that is the manual run stitch. And I saved that for right now because it's it's one of those tools that we don't use very often. And you've seen Walter probably do it a couple times. We utilize it on things like really, really small run stitch lettering. The lettering that is just too small to work with keyboard fonts, ones that you really want to get detail, but you just can't utilize a keyboard font because it's just too small. So I created this where it says Floriani FTCU. I created this in just a Word document. I think it was like size 16 font. So it's a really, really small font. And I'm going to zoom into it. It's going to get kind of pixelated, but I just wanted you to see that this is very, very small. And I'm going to get my ruler here, and I'm going to click and drag to let you see that it's only 3.4 millimeters tall. And so it's a very, very small font. And when you're doing your own fonts, utilizing the, like really small fonts, utilizing the manual stitch, the trick with it is you want to go over each letter twice and only twice. And that's the trick to getting really good looking running stitch lettering, is that every part of a letter you've gone over 2 times and only 2 times. I don't want to spend a lot of time with this, but I want to show you really quickly. Because you're going to go over each part twice, the other trick is to go the shortest distance over and then come back. So you're going to work your way through a letter and back, making sure you go over each letter twice and only twice. So to start with, because I know I have to go there and back, I'm going to start with the FTCU so I can go there and back and then jump right into the Floriani, but I'm going to go backwards. I'm going to go from the I to the F and then back to the I. And you do that a lot with lettering. A lot of people have this misconception that because you read left to right, you need to go left to right. But you have to think of lettering just like you would any object in a design. You're not worried about how you would read it. It's what works best for embroidery to eliminate as many trims and jumps as possible. So let's go ahead and get started with it. I'm going to focus on the FTCU first. And one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to work on the outer edge. I'm not going to try to go down the center. I'm going to try to work along the outer edge. So, and by doing that, I'm just making it a little bit wider each letter so it'll be able to show up even better. So let's start with the F, and like I said, I'm just going to work my way through. So I'll start down at the bottom, and I want to take almost the shortest distance that I can. But when I get to this upper part of the F, I want to drive a few short stitches into the fabric so I don't have to do any trims. You've seen Walter do that a lot. It's called kind of hiding stitches. So I drove a couple 2 to 3 millimeter long stitches there. I'm going to come across, so I'm going to go all the way over on this letter T, and I'm going to drive in these little stitches again for this letter C. Like I said, I'm going to work my way around, try and take about the shortest distance possible. Another one of the things, I'm going to come back here, one of the other misconceptions is that a lot of times people think that they have to really try to follow a curve in small lettering, and you don't. You can make it like what I'm doing here and make it kind of straight. It will actually stitch out really nicely. So I'm coming in here for this letter U. I'm going to come in. So now I've gone all the way through one time, taking a short distance through. So everything that you see this line, that's gone through once. So now I'm coming back. So this will be twice in this area, twice, twice, once, twice. Drive those little stitches in. That'll be twice, 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 once, once, twice, twice. Coming back into the letter T, this part will be twice. I'm going to come down halfway, come back up. Everything is done twice and only twice. So there's once, twice, and then down. Now I can right mouse click and you will see that I've actually created that FTCU. And this will actually stitch out very, very nicely. It might look like a choppy C and a choppy U, but you will see that it's actually pretty clear if you stitch it out. So now that I've finished that one, I can jump right into the word Floriani. Now one thing I'll point out, so I'm going kind of quick with this, but on the letter I, I'm only going to go up halfway and jump over because I don't want the line to be at the bottom of the top necessarily. So I'd rather have it kind of come in the middle. So I'm going to click and go halfway up, and I'm going to, oh, sorry, I'm kind of starting. I got to start here on the edge, drive a couple of these little short stitches in, and I'm going to come down, go about halfway. I'm just going to work my way around. Now with the letter A, I do like to come up to the letter A, and I do like to finish off the inner part first. It's just a personal preference. You don't have to. Let's see, come through here. I'm going to skip the letter I entirely at first, and I'll get it on the way back. And I do like to finish off the inner part of the letter R. You can see I'm just working my way around. Drive a couple short stitches in here. And you kind of have to make a decision on the letter O on how you want it to be. I'm going to come in right here, and I'm just going to come around this way. Drive a couple stitches in here. Oh, back up a little bit. Oh, got these little stitches here. Come in, go all the way up to the top here. Come down. Now I'm going to work my way back, making sure that I get every letter twice and only twice. So I've gone once around here, but I haven't gone anywhere here yet. So I'm just going to go and work my way around. Now everything is going to be once. And so I'll just work all the way around again on that letter O, and it will be twice in every area. Jump over this R, I'll drop down to get this bottom part. Then you'll see that I will work my way around. I've already gotten twice inside of here because I went forward and then back, so I've already finished that. So every letter is twice and only twice. One of the tricks here, you'll see, I'll show it in another thing, when you hold down the Shift key to create straight lines. but I'm just going to work my way around. I've already gotten in the middle twice, so I'm just going to come around here, finish this up. This is a more, obviously, something that not a lot of people will work on, is doing the manual stitch, because it does take some time. But once you figure out the puzzle of actually doing small lettering utilizing the manual stitch, it is a lot of fun, and it's really simple to do. So you can see that I just created the words Floriani FTCU, and just to show you what size this really is, I'm zoomed in at 938%. So I'm going to come back here and I'm going to go to 100%, just so you can see really how big, how small this lettering is. So that's how you utilize the manual stitch. So we've gone through each of the stitch types and how to create them manually. And so what I wanted to do next is, I know we're getting pretty close on time, but I wanted to show you some of the things you can do once you know how to use those tools. So I'm going to bring in, I've shown a heart a lot of times, but I'm going to bring in this heart because with this heart, you'll notice that I have pink in the middle, I have a black border, and you can also see I have some shading here. And so what I want to do is show you a little bit about how you can create an effect like shading with a design. And it's very simple to do. So the first thing to do also with digitizing, so once you know how to use the tools and you're wanting to create something, first thing you have to do is know what type of stitch to use. So that's where the ruler comes in. The ruler is what tells you what type of a stitch something needs to be. So this black border, what you do is you measure across it and see what it says. It says 6.6 millimeters, tip, use a satin. Well, before I even get started, I'm going to change my ruler to inches. I'm going to come in here, select my image. I want to look at how big this is. This design is actually 6.38. It's basically 6 by 6. I don't really want it to be that large. I'm going to say I want it to be 3.5 inches in width. Because let's say I have a 4x4 hoop. I want to make sure it fits in there. So I can zoom in now, and you'll see that that measurement was 6 point something for across here. Let me go back into metric. Now if I go across, it's 3.3 millimeters. So it's very important that you actually get your design how you want it sized before you ever get started. This pink area, if I measure across it, its widest point, 80 millimeters, tip, use a fill. If I go into the shaded part, it looks like it's widest about right here. That's 11.5 millimeters. It says tip, use a fill. So now I know that I need to use a fill, and a satin. So the next thing you do is think dimensionally. What looks like it would be the closest to you? And what would look best finished? Well, the satin border will really clean things up at the end, so I want to do that last. But if I'm going to do shading on top of my pink, I've got to do the pink before I do the shading. So the first thing I'm going to do is the pink heart, then the shading, then the border. So I'm just going to do this really quick. I'm going to grab my complex fill because I learned that it needed to be a complex fill. And based off of what you saw earlier, I'm going to hold down the control key as I go around this pink. And remember, coming off of a tight corner, I'm going to release the control key so that I can get that nice defined edge. And then I'll hold down control again as I go around the rest of the object. Go to my last one, right click. I want the stitches to actually go left to right. So I'm going to click and drag it and make it more at a 0-degree angle. And I want it to start down here, and I want it to end up here. So I've created that, and now I need to do this other piece. So I can change the color if I want. I can come in here, and I can just kind of come and find a pink. Or I like to use Y40 a lot, so I can come into my Find button, type in Y40, hit Find, it'll find it. I can apply that color to it. If I put in 3D view, you'll be able to see that. And next, I'm going to do this shading. I can still see it, even though the stitches are on top of it. So I'm going to go ahead now and grab my fill stitch because I knew it needed to be a fill again. I'll grab this lighter color here, and I'll do the same thing. I'll just click around it. Get around it really quickly. I'm not going to go all the way down to that point. I'm going to come across right here. I'm working my way back, finish it off. Right mouse click. I also want this one to go left to right. And the reason I want this to go left and right is whenever you're doing gradients and you're wanting to blend one color into another, have the stitches go the same direction because one will kind of blend into the other better. So I'm going to select this. I have it selected here. I'm going to turn off underlay because this is going to be a gradient. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come into my fill properties, and usually you use a density of 0.45. So I want to make that a lot lighter. So I'm going to use like a 1.0 density. That's a pretty light density, and it will allow, in 3D view you can't really see it, but it will allow the pink to show through, so it will create a nice gradient. Last thing to do is just create the border. So it's pretty simple to do. We can grab whatever satin stitch tool we want. I'll do the classic satin really quick just to show you the back and forth method, and I will just work my way around this object, around the border here. I'm going to actually put my down arrow key. You see if I put my arrow keys, it will actually move the screen a little bit. And now I'm going to just release my control keys and do a couple points without holding down control. Then I can start using control again. Oop, kind of was off there. I should go quickly here, but get around this image really quick. I'm going to hit the up arrow key so I can zoom up on the page. And there I created that border, and I can easily change that color to black, which is 900. Select it, and you will see that it's now in black. So let me grab my image, turn it off so you can actually see that the stitches are created. And it's a pretty simple thing to do. So learning how to use the manual tools, it's very helpful. The more you practice with them, the easier they become. And don't be scared to try them. Don't be scared to do some manual creation of embroidery. You'll find that the more you do it, the more you enjoy it, the easier it becomes, and you will like the results that you get much better, the ones that you create yourself. So I hope that you've enjoyed this. Kathy, are you still there?
I sure am, Mr. DJ. Excellent.
Okay. Well, the amazing thing is that it's exactly 9 o'clock.
I know you are amazing. Let me tell you, that was a fantastic webinar, DJ. I learned all kinds of stuff.
So we just wanted to show a little bit on how to use it manually. I know that the other tools like the fling repeat and all that are probably a lot more fun to watch and to learn from, but these are the important things of creating your own designs. So hope you enjoyed it, and if you want to watch it again later, we'll have it available on the club. in the next 24 hours or so. So I hope you enjoyed it. You have anything to add at the end, Kathy?
Well, I just want to thank Karen Vernez and our moderators for all their help with the questions and answering questions. And we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. Have a good night.
All right, thank you, everybody. Have a good night.